everyone, this is Lincolnus Prime, and today we are taking a look at the S.H.MonsterArts 2021 Godzilla vs. Kong Mechagodzilla. And before we look at the figure, I do want to start by taking a quick look at the box. So on the front, we do have a very nice picture of Mechagodzilla on the front. Godzilla vs. Kong Mechagodzilla from Godzilla vs. Kong 2021, S.H.MonsterArts, Monsterverse, Bandai, Tamashii Nations, Legendary, Toho, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. On the bottom, we get Mechagodzilla from Godzilla vs. Kong, stuff I can't read nor do I care about. On the top, we get Mechagodzilla from Godzilla vs. Kong 2021. On the side, we get pretty much the same wording, Monsterverse logo, and on the other side, we get pretty much that, but the with a picture of Mechagodzilla on the side, and then on the back we do get our promo images of Mechagodzilla. And one cool thing I do want to point out, so in my previous Godzilla vs. Kong S.H.MonsterArts review, I did show that these boxes can go together to form an image. Well, the smart people at Bandai have figured out a way to make this even better. So put that there, put this here, and boom, full image, and I love how this looks. And moving right along, here we have the 2021 Mechagodzilla, and this thing looks amazing. Now, I am going to start off by kind of sandwiching this, because there are things that I like, and then there are things that I'm not the biggest fan of. First off, starting with the things that I love on this figure, that would be the amount of absolutely amazing detail on this figure. And it really shows how much care Bandai wanted to put in this figure in terms of the sculpt, because everything here is insanely movie accurate. Proportionally, he looks great, especially with the other Godzilla and Kong figures, and he is bigger, which is, accurate, so I do love that aspect. But the sculpt is absolutely outstanding on this figure, and some cool features as well. This figure is not entirely plastic. There are die-cast bits on this figure, and I love that element. We do get die-cast on the feet, on both legs. We get die-cast on the knee pads. There is die-cast, I believe, in the joints as well, but it's more so internal, but I do like that element as well. So there's more die-cast, especially in these joints, and die-cast on the elbow joints. And we do get some more die-cast. Pretty much this entire chest region right here is die-cast, and I absolutely love that. And if you want to know how to tell if parts on a figure is die-cast, watch Jobby the Hong. He will tell you his technique, and that is called the cold touch technique. So that's what I use as well. So lots of die-cast, lots of really nice detail on this figure, and it does in fact show. So yes, but I do love that aspect. Now, what I don't necessarily love, now I will say in advance before I go any further, is I could probably understand why they did not do this, but the lack of red paint. Because in the movie, Mechagodzilla had a lot of red highlights, especially throughout most of the fight scenes when he'd be fighting against Kong and Godzilla. But we don't really get much of that on this figure. We do get that mostly in the eyes, which does look really nice, and pretty much throughout the tail on the spikes. So it looks good, it's very minimal, but the reason I can understand why is because this might just be more of a standard Mechagodzilla. Later on, I feel like Bandai could introduce a potential special color version Mechagodzilla with maybe even extra accessories and hopefully a proton scream. This has been an endless struggle between me and Bandai, where every time I get a figure that should have come with an atomic breath, it doesn't. In this case, it makes sense why, and I'm not going to really complain much about that, because the amount of detail looks great, and just the fact that it doesn't really have the most red paint is just not, it's not entirely a big deal if that just means that it's just specifically for this version. Some other issues I would like to point out. I am luckily not a victim of these problems, but I have not had a single part of this figure break on me. And I don't know if that's just because I've had good luck with S.H.MonsterArts recently, or if a lot of people just aren't handling their figures well. Now, I'm not going to discount the fact that yes, there are a lot of factory defects when it comes to Bandai's products, especially with S.H.MonsterArts. So a lot of people do tend to fall victim to parts breaking, especially on this particular figure. But I will say, from what I have seen just by messing around with this figure and doing my darnest to be as careful as possible, I feel like I can understand what has happened with some other people's S.H.MonsterArts Mechagodzilla figures, but I will cover that later. But my main issue is mainly just how delicate this figure is, but let's be real here, it's a $150 figure, and it's the kind of figure that you really don't want to go ape mode on. It is S.H.MonsterArts for a reason, and it is expensive for a reason, so it's not something you want to mess around with and play with as much. But I will say there are some things that I feel Bandai could have done differently. One of those things being how tight some of the joints are, because there are a lot of really tight joints. And while that could be a good thing, because it's not going to be a floppy mess, it's not always a good thing. Like I said, I will also cover that in the articulation segment. Like I said, I do want to sandwich this part. So we got the bread, which was some good parts. We got the meat, which was some improvements that could be made. So now it's time to add the second piece of bread. The paint on this figure that is there is phenomenal. I absolutely love the way everything on this figure in terms of the silver paint looks. I love the sleekness to it. I love the shine to it. And just how this figure feels is a dream. But a lot of care was put into just how this figure looked on S.H.MonsterArts' part, and I really, really do appreciate that. Now let us move on to features and accessories. We do get 2 accessories in the box, so we get these alternate hand accessories, and these ones are more for if you want to create more of a dynamic look depending on what you want to use, and it gives you variety. But the cool thing about these is that you can actually take off the finger parts, and bringing in Mechagodzilla here, take off his hand as carefully as I can, and as you can see, the fingers here do the exact same thing, where they can kind of pop off and you can interchange the fingers. So that is a cool feature, and you could also just, you know, you could do that, pop that on, and there you go. So I think I really do like how that works, and I'm really glad that they were able to include a feature like that. A lot of people, on the other hand, were more so just wanting them to make fully articulated fingers, and honestly, I can understand that. I feel like that could have cut the cost just by a little bit, and that way they could have included maybe some different accessories. I don't know, but I do feel that they could have done something just a little different here in terms of the accessories, but I am not too much heavily complaining. Honestly, just like the fact that you can mix and match the parts. I do think that that could have been a little bit of a better move on Bandai's part, depending on the circumstances. If it was harder to get hinges in here, and considering how fragile this figure is, I feel like this is probably just the safer option. And there are some other features I would like to point out. We do get a really cool feature right in the shoulders. So if you lift these panels up, it is a bit hard to do this, but if you have like fingernails or at least just something, some kind of tool, pry it open. But there you go. He does have little missile details on the insides of the shoulders, and you can do that on both sides. This one is a little bit easier to access, but I do like that feature as well. And then we do get these sections right here, which all you got to do is just fold these down. I have broken nails, so I don't want to mess with that. But yeah, so that's a really cool feature, and I'm pretty sure these missile sections are also die cast, so I do really like that. And they do just flip in like that and like that, so kind of glad that they included that. Now, one thing I do wish they could have included was the spinning tail feature. I'm not too I'm not too much complaining about this, mainly because it probably would have been a little difficult to kind of incorporate into the tail. So I feel like it could have just been a little too much, but who knows? At least they could have added like an extra joint here, because these segments right here are all connected. These are all one piece, so I'm not the biggest fan of that. But in terms of just the missile features, I do still like that. And now let us endure the scary part. Articulation. First, we do have a hinge joint at the jaw, and you do have to keep the head lifted up, because if it's down like this then the jaw can't move, so keep it lifted up if you want to open the jaw, but it can open about that wide. You do get some nice inside of the mouth detail, but it is kind of lackluster because the inside of the mouth detail isn't fully accurate, but it looks good from the sides and you're not really looking at it from the inside, so it doesn't really matter, but it can close as well. Look down that much, look up that much, a bit of rotation because it is on a ball joint. You can look left and right, all that kind of stuff. So we do get that, and then we do get some segments right in here, and this part is kind of like separate from this, and it does add for a little bit more of a dynamic look, so I do like that. So we can look down and up that far and side to side, and because of that little cut, it does make it look a little bit more natural, I guess you could say. So I do like that, and it can rotate here and here as well. I don't like how squeaky that sounds, so if you have this problem, be careful, because I also do not want to have a headless Mechagodzilla, but we do get that. One thing that some people were kind of complaining about, and I don't really care as much about it, but there is nothing in the torso. There's no articulation in the torso, but at the same time, this is an entire die-cast piece. Could they have incorporated like at least a ball joint? Maybe, but I honestly don't really care. As long as he can move in like most of the other places that are important, this is not a huge deal to me. We do get hinge joints at the shoulders, so they can kind of go up and down, just to accommodate for a little bit more posability in the arms, because the arms can move out about that much. Don't force it too much, especially if it's tight, because this is a very tight joint. We do get a swivel at the shoulder here, and it can go in about that much. We do have a ball jointed butterfly hinge at the shoulder, which I really do like, and I like how that looks and works, so that is very, very nice. We do get a swivel at the elbow, no swivel at the bicep, so do not go looking for one on this, because it does not have it and you will break this, so don't expect one on that. And then we do get a hinge joint at the elbow, which for most people, including me, is very, very tight, so be careful with that. And then we also do get a ball joint at the wrist, so it can swivel up, down, all that kind of stuff. So basic ball jointed hand, and it is the same thing on the other arm. Now let us go over the scariest part of his articulation: the legs. So one thing I would like to mention, I feel that people who have broken theirs or have had theirs broken, first off, there's two things that usually happen. Factory defect. If you've seen Luminous's video on this, then they will point out that it was a factory defect, where basically both of these sections in the pistons, because they're connected on very, very tiny ball joints, were broken out of the packaging. So that is something I would highly recommend you guys be careful on. I did buy this in person, so I did not buy this online. When it comes to buying online stuff, I like to see the figure's condition before buying it, so I know that I'm not getting something broken. But that's just me. But luckily nothing is broken, and I would very much like to keep it that way. But the piston sections are on ball joints right in these areas. You can remove them. There are instructions that come with them that say that you can remove them, but I'm not going to do that. Unless they break, then I will, but I'm not going to do that. But basically the way that these work is you can move the legs up and they will kind of shift around in a different way. I don't like the way that resistance sounds. And here's another thing I would also like to mention about being careful. I know that this is a review, but I also kind of want this to be a PSA of sorts. When you move the leg, when it's out and you move it back in, you will feel it stop. When you feel it stop, stop. Do not go any farther, because that is also one of the reasons that these guys tend to break. Another thing I would also like to mention is that because of the way the pistons are molded, because of where the resistance in this area kind of meets, it kind of bends it outwards, and I know that's just so it makes it easier to take out the pistons, but I've built Gunpla before, and Gunpla, especially the Master Grade kits, have piston detail as well that works similar to this, but this is a different case. I've never seen a kind of piston move where it kind of bends outward, and that is really what makes me uncomfortable about this figure. So, but like I said, when you move the legs back in and you feel it stop, stop. Do not go any further than it should. So that is one thing that I do recommend. That's probably another reason why some people's figures might be breaking. Another problem could be the plastic, but who knows. Anyways, let us move back to the articulation. So the legs can move forward about that much. I don't want to risk moving them any further, and they can move back about that much. So yeah. So because of the pistons, there's not a lot of range. If you do remove them, there is more range, but I just don't want to deal with that. So yeah, there is a thigh swivel, and oh boy, that is even worse feeling. So yeah. Anyways, so we do get that. The legs can also move out about that far, and yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Knees. Let us talk about the knees. The knees are also on pistons, and the pistons are a bit of a similar case, but at least these ones work a little more to my favor. So the knees can move out and in about that much. So there we have the knee articulation. We do get some articulation in this area, so this can rotate up and down, as well as this back section, in which it does have on both sides, and the feet, which are die-cast, do rotate right at here, so they do pivot pretty nicely, and they can move up and down, so like out and in. So that's pretty good. At first, I was looking at the toes, and I thought that these could rotate. Then I almost tried to move it, and I felt the resistance, and I chose not to. So if you think there's articulation here, there could be, there might not be. Don't try it. I just don't try it. But anyways, moving on to the tail. I love this tail, but it makes me nervous because the way the ball joints work are very interesting. The ball joints are molded connecting to the actual parts. They're not like the dumbbell ball joints that you might see on other S.H.MonsterArts. They are actually connected to each segment. And while that does seem like it could work, because this plastic is a lot different from what they use with other S.H.MonsterArts figures, it could be prone to breaking. There's another person, I don't remember his YouTube name. I will link one of his videos in the description though, and he made a custom Mechagodzilla, and as he was moving the tail, he moved it just a little bit too far, and it broke in two segments, like right around in this area. So definitely don't move it. If you feel it starting to resist, just like I said before with the pistons, stop. Do not go any farther, because that is another problem that happens with people's figures. As you could tell, most of the time in this video I've been talking about how delicate and fragile this figure is, and I want to keep this thing intact as best as I possibly can, because honestly this is one of my favorite looking S.H.MonsterArts, and I would like to keep it in one piece. But the way the tail moves is very, very nice. I don't have any creaking noises in this, and it is very, very buttery smooth too. So I just love the way that the movement in this tail feels. It just feels so nice compared to most other S.H.MonsterArts tails. So definitely, when it comes to articulation, it's not perfect. There's a lot of resistance in the joints, but it does what it needs to, and you can pull off some really, really nice poses as well, just by accommodating the amount of movement in this figure. There is another thing I would like to mention that I absolutely love about this figure, but because of the die cast in some of the joints as well as in the feet, you can lift the tail up and move the legs forward, and he will be able to stand up without his tail having to touch the ground because of the amount of weight being put into the front. So I love that feature, because if you look at like the S.H.MonsterArts Godzilla 2021, for example, you can't really do that because everything is kind of weighed down. I'm trying to find it here. I'm just going to move that over. And you can't really do it. You have to kind of keep him grounded, but he just kind of tips over and his feet will pretty much just kind of move up. So you can't really do that with most other S.H.MonsterArts figures, but I really like that the fact that this can do that. It's also because the tail is very light, so the tail does not add much weight to the back. So because most of the weight is like right up here in the front, because you have a lot of the die cast up front as well, like you have it in the chest and the feet and in the knees and joints and all that kind of stuff. So it's mostly in the main figure, not so much in the tail. So the fact that they were able to do that and make that work, I just really, really like that. And with the articulation that you do get on this figure, you can pull off a lot of really, really nice looking poses, and he looks great from every angle possible. And for a quick size comparison, here we have the S.H.MonsterArts Mechagodzilla next to the Playmates Proton Scream of Mechagodzilla. And I will review this soon, but I will say I don't know if I lost the atomic breath for this or not. I may have misplaced it, but if I do find it, then I will review it as soon as I find it. But these two do look pretty good together, and honestly, because the fact that Playmates did something similar with this, or what I should say, because Playmates made an alternate version with a Proton Scream, maybe Bandai will do something similar, who knows, because, you know, at the same time, this is Bandai we're talking about, and the last time, or actually a few times, whenever they would make a atomic breath version of a figure, they just don't include the atomic breath. So who knows, but if they do, and if it comes with an atomic breath, I'll probably consider picking it up, but I am not too sure. But there we have that comparison. For the moment we've all been waiting for, here we have the whole gang all together, and I just gotta say, it feels great just having the entire set, and these guys look absolutely amazing all together. And for my final comments on this figure, I would have to highly recommend him if he was not as fragile as he is. On the upside, you get a really, really nice, detailed, and very nicely painted figure, but at the same time, you are kind of not really getting a lot of paint, and he is very, very delicate. So it's one of those figures that you either have good luck with it, or you don't have the greatest luck with it, and it is very painful for most people when they order their Mechagodzilla figure, or they buy their Mechagodzilla figure and it just comes damaged in the box. Now, while I may have a great copy, it's not going to be the same for most people, but like I've stated earlier in the video, just make sure to be very, very careful when you get yours, especially if it's in good condition, because those pistons, especially the cylinders that connect to the pistons that connect into the crotch region, can very easily break. So definitely take major caution when moving it around, and the instructions in the box do show that you can remove the pistons. So if you don't really want to risk breaking your figure, I guess I would recommend doing so, but at the same time, it's not guaranteed that it will probably stay intact, because especially those pistons are very much like toothpicks, so that's another problem that you could probably face. But the good thing is that they are on ball joints, so it is good to at least have that option of being able to remove them. So if you want to, definitely do it, but if you want to keep your figure intact but just be insanely careful with it, then also do that, I guess, as well. But overall, he has a lot of pros and cons, but the pros do definitely outshine the cons in some ways, mostly in terms of the look. It's mainly just how the figure feels. I mean, how the figure feels is fine. He feels very solid, he feels very sturdy, but it's mainly just the quality that may be a bigger issue for most people. But when it comes to recommending the figure, I would recommend him if you can find him at a price that is not over $100. Maybe if you can find him in like the $70 to $90 range, then that I think would be a more reasonable price. So definitely get it if you can find it at a price like that. But like I said, take major precaution with this figure. It is not much of a toy. It is a collectible item, so that's why stuff has to be taken very, very cautiously. And honestly, I think Bandai also just needs to step up their game when it comes to how they package their figures and how they distribute them, because that's also the other problem to why people are getting theirs broken and all that kind of stuff. So it's mostly just a quality control issue on Bandai's part, but sometimes it could also just be someone probably just mishandling their figure. Just make sure when you get this figure, do as much research as possible and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so anyways guys, that is about it for this review. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.